this was a company that was owned by BHP a year and a half ago. Just BHP, big-hearted people we used to call them. 100 years of iron boats there were, now gone, shedded. They've seen what they've done overseas, their environmental record. We know what they're doing with tax. I mean, this is the future, isn't it? So they get rid of a company. The company can't afford to wash a coal miner's overalls. No laundry. So they turn up for 10 minutes in their underpants, as you do, you know, prove a point. And what comes down? The ombudsman comes down and sues them. Now, that's the sort of Australia we live in. BHP there, ombudsman over there, and a coal miner in his underpants over there because he can't get his clothes washed. Now, I want to recognise the traditional owners of the land. Wonderful, Matilda, to meet you. One of the things about getting a bit long in the tooth, I remember, Matilda would remember this, even though she's much younger than me, that there was a 10 embassy down in front of Parliament House in the early 70s about justice and reconciliation. Gary Foldy, people like Gary Foldy, Chico Dixon, who was also a member of the MUA in those days, Waterside Workers Federation, Terry O'Shane, many, many great Australians who sat there and demanded the right for reconciliation and to have some justice. So we're doing the same here in this 10 embassy after all of these years. We're standing on this land, and I want to recognise traditional owners of the land because the local mob let us. Coppers didn't let us. Parliament didn't let us. The local mob let us because they stand up for Australian values, just not their own justice values, justice for all Australians, the right of all Australians working in men to work. I want to recognise those and their elders past and present. Look, it says it all, doesn't it? That you can be, if you're in your home in the middle of the night and someone came and dragged you out of your bunk, dragged your kids out of their bunk and threw them out on the street, what would you do? You'd say, oh, that's the Landlord Act. That's okay. I've been emptied out. Or would you say, like any other fair-minded Australian, that's not good enough? When a seafarer goes to sea in this country, war or peace, 1 in 8 merchant seafarers died in the Second World War. When we celebrate Anzac Day the other day, don't forget the service people that gave their lives in the merchant navy in this country, under the Australian flag, under the red duster. Don't forget those things. They are embedded in our consciousness and the sort of country we want to live in. And so the reward for them, after all of those years, when they're at sea, they're at sea. That's their home. They eat there. They communicate with each other there. They have cultural values there. They are able to engage around their work and live a full life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, sometimes month in, month out. So when you come to port and someone comes and drags you out of your bunk at 2 o'clock in the morning because they want to replace you with a foreign seafarer, nothing wrong with those foreign seafarers. Indians, they didn't know anything about it. No one told them. They were in the dark. They were brought in a clandestine fashion, all under the watch of this government and DOTARS, the regulator that allowed it to happen, and marched up the gangway with thugs, you know, with their security thugs with a big flashlight, the Armalite flashlight banging in their hands, too many of them, and dragged these guys, another underpants story, dragged these guys out of their bunks in their underpants. What is it with this government and underpants? Jesus Christ. You know? They should put the bloody underpants on their head. That's what I reckon. See, this is not good enough. We have to stand up for our rights. This is fundamentally about the sort of Australian that we want to live in. Yeah. Do we want an Australia where BHP can walk away from merchant seafarers, dump their steel, now iron ore going out of the joint, chock-a-block, coal going out of the joint, chock-a-block? What do? Don't want to pay tax. Let's move to Singapore. Let's go somewhere else. This is the sort of Australia we want to live in. This is the sort of Australia that exists. This is the sort of Australia that's going to sustain you and me and my family and my grandchildren, my granddaughters. This is the sort of Australia that we want to just stand on the sideline and let go. Well, it's not. They say Malcolm Turnbull's got all of these wonderful business skills, so he's got to be a political leader because he's got so much money. Think about having so much money, your peer group There's a bunch of other people with a shitload of money. And they don't really know what's going on the ground. They don't know what it's like to be a young university student that is relying on education, a tertiary education. And even then they may not get a home because of the speculation, because of the inability to deal with that sort of speculation, the thing that's driving the banks, because they don't want to get in the way of this whole polarisation of wealth within this country. Now, it's not a polarisation of wealth that spreads itself across the middle class and across working men and women. Working men and women have been dragged out of their bunks on the Portland for no other reason that they pay tax. They get an Australian wage negotiated by their union legally over a long period of time as reconciliation of not seeing their families, working 7 days a week, working almost unlimited overtime. Not one day was lost in industrial action on the Portland over nearly 38, 40 years. Not one day. So what's the reward of that? The Ombudsman. These guys, you pick them out and have a talk to them afterwards. These guys, many of them haven't worked since. Because the Portland is only the tip of the iceberg. Another ship gone. Another ship gone. Another ship gone. Are the trades gone? No, the trades are still going between Australian ports. The trades are still competing with road and rail. The trades are part of a domestic infrastructure. The trades isn't a foreign industry. It's not an export industry. It's not an import industry. It's a domestic industry. And so why shouldn't Australian workers have a right to work in their own domestic industry? And why should they be dragged out of their homes and persecuted because they are in a strong union and they find their voice? Why should they be chased by the Ombudsman? The Ombudsman, WTF, the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman doesn't give a rat's ass about all of these seafarers round and round the coast with no MSIC card. We don't know where they come from, no background, no taxation, often murdered. We've had murders, they come and go, no one gives a bugger rat's ass in the federal coppers about it. There's this whole blanket industry in Australian waters competing with road and rail. The Ombudsman doesn't give a flying what's-his-name about that. But what he cares about is that people stood up and said, it's not right to take my job. If the job goes, if the industry shuts down, fair enough. Alcoa is still running that ship. Alcoa is still earning money off that refinery down there. Alcoa relies on the Victorian taxpayer to carry their energy bill. Alcoa built the business on subsidisations, both state and federal. Alcoa's got a responsibility to employ Australian workers under Australian conditions and terms of business. That's their responsibility. Same as it's BHP's responsibility to pay tax and to have miners that can not dump the company when it goes, not pay tax. What are they going to do in Brazil now? If it suits them, let's dump the water there. Oh, Jesus, bit of a slip up there. Better sack those managers. What's it say about the governance in this country? ESG. And now what's happening to BHP, the big-hearted people? Broken Hill Proprietary Limited was going to be taken over by a hedge fund 4 days ago, devalued. That's the sort of Australia we want. This company that was able to take the coal, take the iron ore, build the steel, build the nation, provide employment, get us through 2 world wars. This is an industry where there's nothing now but iron ore, and they want to move it offshore and pay no tax. They don't want to have added value. They don't want to have industry policy. They don't want to reserve their gas. They don't want to build jobs and industries in this country. They don't want to look to the future. They don't want to provide for the future. Now, budget night's a housekeeping night. My house, not too good at it, Most working men and women and their families battle to make ends meet, particularly when they're in precarious work or casual work. Well, this is housekeeping night tonight. And what we expect in this country, this government, to act on behalf of all Australians, just not the elite, just not the few, just not the chevrons that refuse to pay their tax and is taking us to our High Court so they don't have to pay tax. Alice in Wonderland stuff. Everything that's small is now big. Everything that's big is small. It is absurd. And this government has a responsibility tonight to act for the redistribution of wealth, to act in a way that builds industry, to act in a way that doesn't encourage tax minimisation and tax avoidance, and ensures it so that Australians can get a university degree, so that we can have an ability to have a house, so that we can go forward in retirement into infirmity and sickness, and a guarantee that this country will nurture us because we have given our working lives for this country. Now that's a political challenge. If they don't want to run this country, they should get the bloody hell out of there and let some people in there, some real Australians that want to. Let's stand up for the right to work in this country. Let's stand up to the right to pay tax and have it come back into our communities and in our homes in a way that builds functionality and doesn't create dysfunction. Let's put our hands up for a government on behalf of all Australians, just not a government that's shown it only works on behalf of the very, very few. Thank you very much.